So a jury found that Ed Sheeran's song Thinking Out Loud did not plagiarize Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. But why? What was wrong with the argument made against Ed Sheeran, which revolved around the use of this 4-chord chord progression?
4 chords which are also different and used by songwriters every day.
And how, as Damon K tweeted, do millions all hinge on the note C sharp? And what does this have to do with what my channel does, which is analyze musical storytelling? Let's go. First of all, the two songs, Thinking Out Loud and Let's Get It On, do sound very similar.
Baby,
trying to hold back this feeling for so long.
With what sounds like a nearly identical groove that the lawsuit actually also points out. Let's Get It On is one of the most influential songs ever.
Marvin Gaye, huh?
There is a long history of appropriation of black artists, and Ed Sheeran even famously did a mashup of the two songs himself in concert. But in Ed Sheeran's testimony, he actually admits the real song Thinking Out Loud was based on, Van Morrison's Crazy Love. A song which predates Let's Get It On by a few years. Sheeran's producers even nicknamed Sheeran's song the Van Morrison tune. And yes, Crazy Love also sounds very similar to Thinking Out Loud, not least of which because Crazy Love uses a similar chord progression as Let's Get It On. Both of those progressions begin with a 1 major chord, a minor 3 chord, and then a major 4 chord. But Thinking Out Loud's chord progression differs in one crucial way from these other two songs. It gets to the 4 chord from the 1 chord. Well, if that's a different chord progression, then why is it being sued for having the same chord progression? That's because the underlying bass lines are the same. And that bass going from the major 1 to the minor 3 chord in Marvin Gaye and Van Morrison songs is the same as the bass going from the 1 major chord to the 1 major chord in first inversion, which just means it is a 1 chord with the second note of that chord in the bass. And it just so happens that the second note of the major 1 chord is the same note as the minor 3 chord is based on. That means the first 2 chords in Thinking Out Loud are actually both major 1 chords, or the tonic chord, which gives it a slightly different feeling from Let's Get It On or Crazy Love, which both have a minor 3 chord as the second chord. And this is exactly what Ed Sheeran himself argued when he demonstrated the difference in chord by playing the song both with his first inversion 1 chord and with the minor 3 chord. And here are those 2 different chords back to back. He even reportedly grimaced when he played the minor 3 version. Why? Well, Thinking Out Loud has no minor chords in the main chord progression. Since minor chords are often associated with sadness and major chords happiness, by that standard, Thinking Out Loud is a happier song compared to Let's Get It On. In fact, in that concert footage of the mashup, Sheeran says Thinking Out Loud was his attempt at writing a happy song.
This is my attempt on a happy song.
The lawsuit tries to claim that this minor 3 chord distinction doesn't really matter and cites this music theory textbook, The Complete Musician by Stephen G. Lates, who says the minor 3 can be substituted for the 1 chord first inversion as an extension of that 1 or tonic chord. And as an example, Lates uses Puff the Magic Dragon.
Puff the magic dragon lived by the sea.
and again says the minor 3 chord is a prolongation of the tonic. And the reason that the minor 3 might be described as an extension or prolongation of the tonic chord is that the minor 3 chord has only one note of difference from that one major chord in first inversion. In the key of D major, that note would be a C sharp in the minor 3 versus a D in the one chord first inversion. Hence Damon K's tweet about millions hinging on a C sharp. To go back to Puff the Magic Dragon, sure, you could take out the minor 3 chord and replace it with a 1 chord and the music roughly functions. But that's a functional analysis, and just because something can function similarly to something else does not mean that it does not have its own unique properties. It's kind of like saying a ladder is a weapon because Jackie Chan uses it as a substitute for a weapon, without addressing the fact that a ladder has its own non-weapon properties, like being a way to climb higher, which is not something that most weapons are trying to do. To apply this back to Puff the Magic Dragon, I think the minor 3 chord here is actually essential to how the song makes you feel. Now here's Puff the Magic Dragon with the minor 3 chord immediately followed by a version without it, and I think you can tell there's just something missing. Similarly, if Ed Sheeran had put the minor 3 chord into Thinking Out Loud, it wouldn't achieve his aim of making a super happy song. The minor 3 chord would have made it slightly less happy. And indeed, I would say that Let's Get It On isn't necessarily as happy as it might seem. While the lyrics of the song are about doing something that makes people happy, Marvin Gaye is really pleading with his lover in the song to do that thing. Strongly implying that there is quite a bit of resistance to his charms and that he may not even succeed. And perhaps that minor 3 chord works better in Let's Get It On because that minorness represents that unfulfilled desire.
Trying to hold back this feeling for so long.
The lawsuit also claims that because Marvin Gaye frequently sings an E flat note over a G minor chord, that E flat effectively turns the G minor or minor 3 chord into a 1 chord in first inversion. But what I would say is that the G minor in the accompaniment is actually distinct and not changed by Marvin Gaye's vocal line. Instead, it provides some tension against Marvin Gaye's vocal line, which again is indicative of his unfulfilled desire and longing. By contrast, Ed Sheeran in Thinking Out Loud features a love that is completely fulfilled, with the only tension in the lyrics being a question of how long that fulfillment will last.
Darling, I will be loving you till we're 70.
There is a reason Thinking Out Loud is commonly used at weddings. It expresses a lifelong love. And that 1 chord in first inversion represents that in a small way. If you think about it, the 1 chord is also known as the home key, so the 1 chord in first inversion is the perfect metaphor for the prolongation of that happy home, just as how most people would hope that their marriages are prolonged and extended. Hell, even if you compared the list of songs with the same chord progression that includes the minor 3 chord versus the chord progression with the 1 chord in first inversion, you can see there is definitely a divergent tendency in the quality of the songs. Songs with the minor 3 chord include the classic song of Unfulfilled Yearning, Part of Your World by Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, the overcoming heartbreak song Believe by Cher, and the breakup song All I Ask by Adele. Songs with the 1 chord in first inversion include Come On Over Baby by Christina Aguilera, The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News, How Will I Know by Whitney Houston, and Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede. But of course this is just a tendency, so there are exceptions. When We Were Young by Adele is also pretty sad, and Crocodile Rock by Elton John and Make Your Own Kind of Music by the Mamas and the Papas are both relatively happy. For the complete list of these songs, you can go to Hooktheory.com, which was my last video sponsor, even though they're not technically sponsoring this video, but still I think they're great, especially for this type of research, and I have a 20% off link below in my description. But suffice it to say, the difference between the 1 chord first inversion and the minor 3 chord, subtle though it might be, does mean something. And in a way, I think this points to the way of how musicals often employ music as storytelling. For example, if the earlier "Let's Get It On" with the minor 3 chord represents a character trying to woo a love interest into a night of passion, it makes sense that if the character gets the lover, then a later song might include the same chord progression as a callback, but this time with the 1 chord first inversion instead, which again is major and is the home chord, so it feels happier and less tense. Thanks for watching. Thanks also to my patrons on Patreon, including my newest patrons, Elvira Higueras Garcia and Matt Pope. Please subscribe for more musical analyses, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.